morning, Congressman.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I'd like to talk about health care. Idaho, of course, has the 6th highest rate of uninsured citizens in the country, and that means only 1 out of 7 of our Idahoans has access to basic care. I'm concerned because the GOP bill that narrowly passed yesterday is estimated to increase the number of uninsured in Idaho by 75%. I'd like you to talk about why you supported that bill, and more importantly, I'd like to know what you intend to do to increase access to health care for Idahoans and make it more affordable for us.
Great question. So, if you look at what Obamacare did, with Obamacare, we were trying to help Obama and the Democrats were trying to help 7% of the people who didn't have access to health care. But the problem with Obamacare is that it did it at the expense of 93% of the people that already had access to health care. It made their health rates more increased, it made it less accessible, it made it more difficult for them to have health care, and it made it more expensive, which was the most important thing. So what we did with the bill yesterday is that we tried to help 100% of the people instead of just 7% of the people. So what you do with healthcare right now, the problem with with Obamacare and with the current system is that families have health insurance, but they really don't have more access to healthcare. We just received an email from a gentleman who says that he's paying about $1,500 a month on his health care. He has a $15,000 deductible, and he's never able to access his health care. That's very unaffordable. So what we want to do is we want to reduce the cost of health insurance for all Americans. So what we did is we got rid of some of the regulations in Obamacare that are going to drive down the cost of health insurance. When you drive down the cost of health insurance, you actually make it more affordable and more accessible to more Americans. But we also put about $130 billion into these high-risk pools, and those $130 billion are going to help those people that have been for whom it's been.
You're funny and you're lying.
Well, whatever. So,
okay, let's go ahead.
You don't have to call people liars. You can tell me that we disagree.
You said we don't call each other liars. I'm calling you a liar because you are misinforming.
If you have a question, just go ahead and ask a question.
I hope.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll let others follow up on the health care, because what I would like to ask is your feeling. There is a Senate Bill 26, the Presidential Tax Transparency Act, and I would like to know, I understand you're a congressman, but how do you feel about the so-called President Trump hiding his tax returns when he specifically said that he would show his tax returns? 71% of the time he is lying. This is one of those times when he is lying. I'd like to know how you feel. I believe he's hiding something, and I want to know what a congressman or a senator, who are you protecting? Because I want to know, where is his money invested? Is he benefiting financially from being the so-called president? And where do his contributions go? Does he make any charitable contributions? These are things that are important. Recent presidents have all filed or shown us their tax returns, so I want to know how you feel about it.
That's a good question. I don't think... There is no legal obligation to show your taxes when you're running for president.
There's a moral obligation.
And he chose not to do it.
Because he is immoral, is that what you think? But that's what I'm hearing.
No, I didn't say that there was a moral obligation. There's no legal obligation. There's no obligation for a president or a presidential candidate to show their taxes. I don't think it's necessary. I think if he needed...
Why not?
I just don't... There's just no legal obligation. If he didn't show them, the American people still chose him as president. But I just don't think there's any obligation to do that, so I disagree with you on that. It's between him and the voters. He chose not to show them, and I don't think that we have to.
We are voters, and I think most people here want to see those tax returns. So you're saying if this comes to vote,
I would support it, no.
Yeah, why?
Because I don't think it's something that needs to pass him on.
You don't think he's
Everybody before it. Give to the rich, give to the rich.
Okay, next question.
Sir?
Good morning, Congressman.
Yeah,
You know, I think I've spoken to you before
yes.
about the repeal of Dodd-Frank and the reinstatement of Glass-Steagall. Now, you probably know in Dodd-Frank, the banks that are over-speculated can take money out of people's private accounts to pay off their speculation debts. And I don't think that's good for the American people. If you have a Glass-Steagall law instead, that separates speculation banking from the regular commercial banking. And you know, we had that for 60 years. We had the most stable banking system in the world. So there's that Return to Prudent Banking Act. It's been introduced to Congress. There's 47 co-sponsors, and I'm just wanting you to support them.
Okay, so I actually agree with you on both. I agree first that we need to repeal Dodd-Frank. If you look at Dodd-Frank, it was supposed to protect the little guys, and it was supposed to protect the little banks. But the opposite has happened with Dodd-Frank, just like it happens with most government regulation. The smaller banks are going out of business, and they're being swallowed up by the bigger banks. And if you remember, when they passed Dodd-Frank, it was supposed to help make sure that we never had banks that were too big to fail, right? Well, actually what's happening is that we're creating mega banks now and destroying the community banks and the smaller banks. So I would like to repeal Dodd-Frank, and I also support Glass-Steagall. I've never sponsored it, but I support it. If it came to the floor, I would support it, because I think we do need to have that separation in the banks. The problem with government, and this is something that maybe some of my friends from the left would agree with me on, is that when big business and big government get together, what happens is you grow government and you grow big business, but you're actually hurting the little guys every single time that you do that. So that's why I'm actually very opposed to over-regulating businesses. Because over-regulating businesses leads to smaller businesses hurting while the big businesses thrive. And that's what happened with Dodd-Frank. And now the big banks are really doing very well, and the small banks are not doing well at all.
Would you consider co-sponsoring?
You know, I will take a look at that. Thank you.
Okay, so the next question, we got 4. Number 740. Number 740. Number 756. 756. 476. Let's do those two. So 756 and 740. So go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, I just wanted to make a remark. Contrary to the media and obviously a few people here, my family, my friends, and my neighborhood could care less about Trump's taxes. It's not on the radar even. But one thing that we are concerned about, in Congress, we know that the Democrats are obstructionists. And our concern, we know that the Democrats are obstructionists, but our concern are the establishment Republicans that are also obstructionists. And what are you doing, what can you do, or what can we do to change that?
Well, I'm also concerned about the establishment Republicans. You know, when you look at what happens in Washington, D.C., a lot of the reasons we don't keep the promises that we made is because we make the promises on the campaign side, but when we get to Washington, D.C., the establishment decides that it's too difficult to make tough votes. Because they don't want to come to a town hall like this and get yelled at and have people call them liars and all those different things. I have no problem coming to a town hall like this and facing people and telling them what I think and telling them what my voting record is and telling them the things that I believe in. Some people are going to agree with me, some people are going to disagree with me, and I'm okay with that. It's up to the voters ultimately to decide who should represent them in Washington, D.C. And I'm comfortable whether you agree with me or not. giving you the truth. Some people are not willing to do that. So they campaign like a conservative, but then they go back to Washington, D.C., and they're afraid to take the tough votes. And what happens is that people are more concerned about their re-election than they're concerned about doing the right thing. And this happens on both sides. Both Republicans and Democrats do this. So the establishment in both parties tends to be supreme in the party. And then you end up doing whatever your leadership tells you to do. I disagree with that. That's why we created the Freedom Caucus 2 years ago. I'm one of the founders of the Freedom Caucus. And I was tired of having a party that was not keeping the promises that they made. So we decided that we're going to get together. We have 40 or so like-minded individuals in the House of Representatives, and we work together to try to advance legislation and advance policies that comport with the promises that we made to our constituents. And that's the way I'm working hard to make sure that we keep the promises that we made.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My question does concern health care.
Yes.
And you, in the Pledge to Americans, one of the quotes in the Pledge to Americans is that all Americans, we have an unalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. People who do not have health care do not have life eventually. And my question is about the profits.
The profits?
The profits
Okay.
made by people providing healthcare insurance, healthcare equipment, and pharmaceuticals. So Aetna, United Healthcare, and Humana dropped out of the Idaho exchange because they couldn't afford to insure the people in Idaho. The CEO of Aetna's compensation package is $17 million a year. The CEO of United Healthcare is $16 million a year. The CEO of Humana is $20 million a year. CEOs of companies who produce healthcare equipment, MRIs, stuff like that for hospitals, Johnson & Johnson CEO's compensation is $21 million. In pharmaceuticals, for medicine that people need to keep alive, the worst is Regeneron. His CEO makes $47 million a year. How, when every penny of that is being taken away from patient-centered health care, how is that justifiable morally and ethically? And how is your health care bill going to solve that problem?
You will be surprised that we agree on this. And that's why I supported the AHCA bill that came out yesterday. The main people who were opposed to our bill were the hospitals, the doctors, the people, many of the groups that profit from the current system. Because in the current system, people are making millions and millions of dollars. If
Hospitals are not making, the Brigham Hospital is not making.
If you look at the insurance companies over the last 8 years under Obamacare, they actually helped draft Obamacare. And over the last 8 years under Obamacare, the top 10 insurance companies have actually doubled their profits. So what we're looking for is a system that is more transparent. So I think we need to have more transparency in the healthcare system. We need to have more transparency in the hospital administration. We need to have more transparency in all of these areas. We need to bring down the cost of health insurance and bring down the cost of health services. So there will be probably less profit if we do that, so that companies can actually be leaner and meaner, and they can do the things that are necessary, so they can provide more services to Americans.
To less people.
That has not happened in the past under the old system.
And that's why we need to reform. There were some problems with the system in the past. This Obamacare made it worse, and now we're trying to fix that. So, but I don't disagree with you. And one of the things that you and Trump actually agree on is that he also disagrees with these pharmaceutical companies making these
It's not just, it's the insurance companies that say they cannot afford to provide insurance.
Well, there's insurance, right now under Obamacare, the insurance companies are losing money. You
No,
have.
they're not. Their CEOs are making millions.
In the Obamacare exchange, they're losing money. So that's what I meant, thank you.
How can
No,
they
they
pay
The
did.
CEOs are making millions.
How can they pay their CEOs
That's a good question.
millions of
That's a good
dollars
question.
if they're losing
Yeah.
money?
So-
Well, that's what I want to know,
Yeah,
because it's not going to get fixed
And that's why we need to
if
be.
they can say that.
I think we need a more open market with healthcare and a more open, so we can bring down the cost of health insurance. You will see, Maine did what we passed yesterday in the House. Maine did it with high-risk pools. They actually saw the cost of, even under Obamacare, Maine brought down the cost of health insurance by 24% for all of their citizens. And I think we can do the same thing in Idaho and in other areas.
Didn't work in Oregon.